program for Washington workers. My name is Kristen Mackey, and I'm the Community Relations and Outreach Program Manager for WaCares at DSHS. I also have Allison Eldridge, who is the Transformation Manager at the Employment Security Department, joining me today for this presentation. We'll start with an overview of what long-term care is and how it impacts workers and businesses. Then we'll talk about WaCares program basics, employer responsibilities, and resources we have available for businesses and workers. Then we'll open it up for discussion and audience Q&A. For those of you who have joined on a computer, you can submit your questions through the Q&A function. Feel free to start getting your questions in now. We'll also hopefully have folks joining us via Facebook Live, and we'll be answering questions submitted there as well. I see we're already getting some questions about where to find these slides. They are available on our website at wacaresfund.wa.gov/webinars. And we will add the webinar recording there later as well. And we can send that link out once it's available to all of the folks who registered for the webinar. So we are going to get started with a quick poll. If everyone is able to take a moment to answer these questions, that will help us understand who we've got in the audience today. We're just asking about your role related to WaCares, how much you know about the program, and how familiar you are with long-term care. So I'll give everyone just a moment to put in their answers. All right, and I am going to go ahead and end that poll, and I'll share results so that folks can see. It looks like we do have a vast majority of our audience is an employer working in HR and payroll, so that's great. This is a webinar that is designed just for you, but we do also have some folks who are employees or self-employed people, and you should still get a lot of really great information about the program that's relevant for you. It looks like the majority of people said they're somewhat familiar about the program, but we do have some folks who said they don't know much. And also a lot of people who don't know a lot about long-term care. So we are going to actually get started by talking about what we mean when we say long-term care or caregiving. So long-term care is help with activities of daily living, like bathing, eating, preparing meals, grocery shopping, and more. It does not include medical care, like doctor's visits and treatment for medical conditions. Long-term care covers a broad spectrum of needs and circumstances, including for younger people who have been unexpectedly injured or become disabled or ill. A lot of people don't realize what a broad range of services can be included when we talk about long-term care. We often think of it as care in a residential setting, like a nursing home or assisted living, but it can also include care provided in your own home. In fact, most people with long-term care needs can stay in their own homes with the right support. It's also very common for family caregivers to not realize that they are a caregiver. You might go to your mom's house a couple times a week to cook meals, drive her to appointments, and make sure she's taken her meds, which are all common care activities. In fact, the majority of this type of care is provided on an informal basis by family members, friends, or neighbors. Family caregiving really is the bedrock of long-term care in our state. We have 860,000 family caregivers in Washington. And I want to start by sharing a couple of quick stories from Washingtonians who are getting the kind of help WaCares is designed to provide. So first we have KD. She lives with her husband, children, and her mother-in-law, Kathleen. Kathleen has MS and needs in-home care to help with daily tasks like bathing, dressing, and eating. Getting some help each day with these activities means that Kathleen can stay at home with her family and enjoy time with her grandkids. And then we have Sally and Patty. Patty has Parkinson's disease and gets a few hours of help each day with activities like eating, bathing, and getting around the house. Getting in-home care doesn't just help Patty, it also means that Sally can get a break to do things like grocery shopping or going for a walk. 70% of us will need long-term care at some point in our lives, but the problem is that it can be really expensive. It costs almost $36,000 a year for 20 hours of home care per week, which is the average needed by current Medicaid long-term care clients. And family caregiving has costs as well, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Because long-term care is not medical care, it's not covered by health insurance or Medicare except in rare circumstances. And it's only covered by Medicaid once you've spent down your life savings to just $2,000. Even though long-term care is a predictable cost, most of us don't have a way to pay for it. The median household income for Washington seniors is just $56,000 per year. 41% of Washington workers who are near retirement have no projected retirement income from a pension, 401k, or IRA, and another 42% have no pension and only enough 401k or IRA savings to replace 10% of their pre-retirement income. This is especially critical because our population is aging rapidly. You can see here that the number of people 85 and older, which is the blue line on this graph, will more than double between 2020 and 2034. And that also means that the caregiver support ratio, which is just the number of potential family caregivers for each person and the age range where they're likely to need care, is declining really sharply. So a lot less family support will be available for people in high-risk years of needing care, and family caregivers are more likely to be providing care for multiple loved ones at a time. While walk cares may seem like a new expense for workers, it is important to keep in mind that the current system, where we rely on unpaid family caregivers to provide the vast majority of care, isn't actually free for those families. Almost half of family caregivers experience a related financial setback, and they spend on average 25% of their own income on care-related expenses. It's really common for caregivers to have to leave the workforce early in order to provide care. And caregivers 50 and older who do this lose an average of more than $300,000 in wages and benefits. Most working caregivers say a program like Walk Cares that paid them for the hours they provide care would be helpful. There are also impacts on businesses and workers. Washington State, like the rest of the country, is experiencing a labor force shortage, and it's critical to keep as many people as possible in the workforce. Care responsibilities can have a big impact because the majority of caregivers do work full-time on top of their care and family responsibilities. And most say that their caregiving responsibilities impact their job in some way. Over half report that they had to go in late, leave early, or take time off to provide care. 15% reported reducing their hours. Many, about 8%, reported receiving warnings about their performance or attendance, turning down a promotion, quitting, retiring, or losing benefits. While many caregivers find their role rewarding, it can also be highly stressful. Nearly 1 in 4 report that their health has worsened since they took on the role. Long-term care is also a significant driver of the state budget. It accounts for about 6.6% of the state budget right now. And while we don't often think about it, these costs are paid for by all Washingtonians through taxes on goods and services. As our population ages, those costs will rise accordingly. And without Walk Cares, long-term care costs would have doubled in roughly 2 decades. So let's talk about how the Walk Cares Fund can help. Walk Cares is a universal long-term care program in Washington State. It's an earned benefit, so you contribute for a certain number of years in order to qualify for benefits. It's entirely self-funded by worker contributions, which go into a dedicated trust fund used only for this program. Almost all Washington workers contribute to the program. There are some workers who are automatically not included. So federal employees are not included. Tribal business employees are only included if the tribe opts in, and self-employed people also are only included if they opt in. And then other groups of workers may be able to apply for an exemption. Allison will talk more about that later on. But workers contribute 0.58% of each paycheck to Walk Cares. You can see at the bottom left here what this looks like for the typical worker who makes just over $50,000 a year and would contribute $291 each year, or about $24 per month. You only contribute to Walk Cares while you're working. Contributions stop when you retire or if you become unemployed. With Walk Cares, everyone is covered at the same rate, regardless of pre-existing conditions. And when it comes time to claim your benefits, there are no copays, no deductibles, and you don't need to file claims or front payment for services. We will connect beneficiaries with contracted providers for the services that they want and pay those providers directly. Contributions to the program begin this July on July 1st, and benefits will become available in July 2026. This is what those contributions can look like over the course of a career. You can see the typical Washington income is just about at the level in green here in the middle. And you can see that $290 in contributions each year totals out at $8,700 over 30 years in order to get access to that benefit amount of $36,500, which is adjusted annually up to inflation. Everyone who contributes to WACARES more than 500 hours per year is earning benefits, and that includes part-time and temporary workers. By contributing for a certain number of years, you qualify for the benefit. So there are 3 pathways that you can use to meet that contribution requirement. The first pathway is early access, which is really designed for workers who haven't yet been able to earn lifetime access, but have a care need while they're working or soon after they stop working. And this is for folks who have contributed to WACARES 3 of the last 6 years at the time that they need care and apply for benefits. We also have our lifetime access pathway, which is for workers who contribute for 10 years without a break of 5 or more consecutive years. And this is the pathway that we expect most Washingtonians will use to qualify for benefits. And then we also have a special pathway that's new for near retirees. So anyone who was born before 1968 and is therefore near retirement as the program begins and unlikely to be able to qualify for that 10 years pathway earns 10% of the benefit amount for each year that they work. So if you work and contribute 500 or more hours per year for 3 years, you'd earn 30% of the benefit amount, or just under $11,000, which is also adjusted for inflation. You could also work 500 hours or more after contributions start in July and retire at the end of 2023, and you would still have earned that 1 qualifying year and get 10% of the total benefit amount. Near retirees will have permanent access to whatever percentage of the benefit amount they earn at any time they need care. They are also able to qualify through one of the other pathways if they meet those requirements. Once workers meet contribution requirements and need help with at least 3 activities of daily living, they can get access to a $36,500 budget for services and supports. That is a lifetime benefit amount that will increase over time with inflation. With WACARES, workers get the flexibility to choose the services and supports that meet their needs. So that could mean in-home or residential care, but it can also include home modifications to make your home safer or assistive technology for things like medication reminders and fall detection that can help with some care needs. WACARES is designed to help people age in place in their homes as long as possible, which is what almost all of us want to do, and most of us are able to do if we have the right supports in place. WACARES is also structured to support family caregivers, so you can choose someone who would otherwise be caring for you on an unpaid basis to get training and be paid, and that includes your spouse. And that way, WACARES can help lessen the impact on family caregivers, either by paying them for their time or making sure that they can get access to other support services. We get asked a lot about how far the benefit amount will go, and it will not cover 100% of care for everyone, but it would cover the amount of in-home care an average Medicaid client uses for roughly a year. About a third of people need long-term care for a year or less, and for those people, WACARES may be able to cover all the care that they need. For others, WACARES provides the family with immediate relief and time to plan for future care costs. Here are some examples of how someone might use their benefit. They could pay a family member to care for them for about 10 hours per week for 2 years and get care supplies for a total of about $33,500. Or they could choose services to help them stay safely in their own home. They could purchase $15,000 worth of renovations like bathroom modifications or a wheelchair ramp to improve their home's accessibility. Get an electric wheelchair or scooter and have meals delivered for 3 years for around $26,800. Or someone who needs long-term care due to an unexpected injury could get 20 hours of in-home care per week for a year, plus transportation to appointments and crutches for about $34,600. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Allison.
Thanks, Kristen. So for the employer overview, employers don't contribute themselves, but they do have certain responsibilities related to the WellCares Fund. They need to manage exemptions of their employees, withhold premiums, and report and pay quarterly. We try to align the program as much as possible with paid family and medical leave. So the definitions for employer, employee, and remuneration are consistent with paid leave, and the definition of wages also applies, but the premiums are assessed regardless of the Social Security cap, which is a difference between paid leave and WellCares. Next slide. So for exemptions, the private insurance exemptions, which were the first exemptions to be available, they were available from October 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2022. And those were for people who had private long-term care insurance before November 1st of 2021. And that application is no longer available, but people who received an approval letter are still permanently exempt. Next slide. There are new exemption pathways available. So as of January 1st, 2023, applications became available and will be available on an ongoing basis for people who meet particular conditions. So veterans with a 70% or greater service-connected disability, non-immigrant visa holders, spouses and registered domestic partners of active duty service members, and out-of-state residents. So much like the private long-term care insurance exemptions were permanent, the service-connected disability exemption is permanent. The others are conditional, and if someone were to stop meeting the conditions for that exemption, they would need to discontinue it. So the application process, there's different documentation that's required for each of the exemption types. Folks would need to create an exemption account, and there's details and instructions about the documentation requirements and how to establish an account and submit that application at the WellCares Fund website. We know that folks are anxious to make sure they can get their exemptions approved before premium collection begins on July 1st. And so if they can get their application in before June 1st, we can guarantee that it will be processed and they'll have their decision letter prior to premium collection. Next slide. So as an employer, when you have employees who are exempt, it is the employee's responsibility to apply, and if they're approved, to provide a copy of that approval letter to all current and future employers. Once an employer is notified of an approved exemption, employers must keep a copy of the approval letter on file and must not deduct WellCares premiums from exempt workers. You'll see in the example of the approval letter that there is an effective start date associated with the exemption. So when they're approved, it begins the first day of the quarter following approval. Employees are not entitled to a refund of premiums that are withheld before their approved exemption was effective or before they provided their approval letter to their employer. Next slide. So premium withholding begins July 1st, 2023. The premium is 0.5% of gross wages. The Social Security cap, as I said, does not apply, but the definition of gross wages is aligned between paid family and medical leave and WellCares. We do have a premium calculator on the website, and we can put a link in a bit. We'll make a link available, and I believe there is one on the WellCares Fund website as well. Next slide. Quarterly reporting for WellCares begins October 1st, 2023. It is a combined wage report with paid family and medical leave. So you will report for both programs using the same report. If you've already been reporting for paid family and medical leave, you'll use the same account and complete the same process. It's all integrated. There are some changes to reporting requirements. Generally, your UBI, business name, and total premiums collected for each program are required. And then for each employee, SSN or ITIN, first and last name, their WACARES exemption status, their wages paid and associated hours worked, and the new requirement of adding each employee's date of birth to that wage report. And then we will also be requiring reports even in quarters when there was no payroll. And those are effective for October reporting in 2023. Next slide. So the filing methods that we have for employers are within your account. You can individually enter the information for up to 50 employees. We call that manual reporting. We can also report using a CSV file. There is a template available online. We do have new file specifications that will be published, I believe, the end of this week, which it is the end of the week, but very soon, or the beginning of next week. And the new template will be available online as well. Next slide. Payments between the two programs is the one place where it is not a seamless shared thing. There are separate payments for the separate programs, and that's because the money goes to separate accounts. And so we have integrated it into the flow, and it's easy to do one and move on to the next, but they are separate payments. Next slide. We know that there are a lot of details and a lot of questions, and so we have a number of employer webinars that are coming up through the summer and into the fall. They are covering a variety of topics, and we'll get very in-depth into particular aspects. We do have, I noticed there were some self-employed folks who have joined this webinar. We do have some webinars specifically for self-employed people who may want to elect coverage that are coming up. We have in-depth reporting for employers, in-depth calculating and withholding premiums, and you can get more information and registration details in our employer newsletter. Next slide.
All right. Next, we know you are getting a lot of questions from workers about WACARES, and we want to make sure that you have what you need in order to answer them. So we just want to provide a quick overview of some resources that are available in our Employer and Community Toolkit at wacaresfund.wa.gov/toolkit. These materials are designed for employers as well as any other organizations who want to communicate about WACARES. And many of these materials are available in multiple languages if you have a large number of employees whose primary language is not English. So first of all, we have some great new resources that are specifically for employers. We have a calendar with major milestones and recommendations that make it easy to communicate with employees about the program. It gives you a template for when and how to deploy all of the toolkit materials to ensure that your workers are well informed. We also have a paycheck insert that you can use either electronically or place in printed pay stubs. We have an FAQ document that covers a wide range of questions you may be getting from employees, and we'll continue updating this document as we hear about new questions that are coming up often. And we also have monthly long content that's designed for you to use in all staff emails, mailing list updates, or intranet posts. The content for each month is tailored to what employees need to know at that point in time. We also have a few other materials like social media content that are primarily designed for community organizations, but include some things like simple graphics that you may find useful for including in employee newsletters or other materials. And we have a fact sheet and poster available in English as well as 15 other languages. We recommend putting the poster up in your break room and including the fact sheet and employee benefit packets provided to new employees. We also have an infographic with a visual overview of the program. And we have a wide range of video content available, including animated explainer videos, program overview videos, and recordings of past webinars covering program basics. We're also working on a series of FAQ videos that we hope to publish very soon, covering program basics like who contributes and using benefits. And finally, on the toolkit page, you can find the signups for our Walk Here's mailing list to be notified when new materials like those FAQ videos become available, and to receive other program news and updates on webinars and new resources. Then ESD also has a fantastic employer newsletter that Allison just mentioned that provides monthly updates on Walk Here's, along with information on other programs like paid leave and unemployment insurance. And again, you can find the links to subscribe to both of those on the toolkit page of the website. So we are going to go ahead and move into questions and answers. And I am going to pull some questions from the Q&A to answer live. So let's get started. We've got a question for about portability. So we've got someone asking if an employee is living in Washington and working in Washington, paying into Walk Here's, who then retires and moves to another state, are they able to access those funds while in that other state? So the way that this is set up right now, you do need to reside in Washington in order to be able to get Walk Here's benefits. And the reason for that is because we are contracting directly with providers, and not all states have the same rules about what makes someone qualified to provide long-term care. But the Walk Here's oversight body, which is the LTSS Trust Commission, did make a recommendation to the legislature in its January 2023 report that a option be created to make benefits portable. So if the legislature does take that recommendation up, we will make updates to our website and send out updates to our mailing list as well. So stay tuned for more information on that. And then we've got someone asking whether if someone received an exemption originally, but then canceled their long-term care policy, are they still exempt? Allison, do you want to take that one?
If they received, if their original exemption was approved, they are still permanently exempt.
Thank you. And we've got someone asking, what if employees submit their exemption letters after payroll deductions started? Are employers required to refund the premiums already collected?
No.
Okay. And if someone has elected in to PFML, are they also required to contribute to Walk Here's?
It's my assumption by elected in, you mean they have elected coverage for paid family and medical leave as a self-employed person. They're not, so you wouldn't be required. Yeah, you wouldn't be required to elect coverage for Walk Here's, but you will be able to elect coverage for Walk Here's. And similarly to how we have integrated the employer reporting aspects, we've integrated the elective coverage as well. And so if you choose to elect coverage for Walk Here's, that will be available in your elective coverage account beginning July 1st.
Great. And we've got someone asking, can the employer pay the premiums if they choose to, especially for employees who make less money, if the employer wants to bear that rather than passing along that cost?
Yes, employers are able to do that.
Great, thank you. And let's see. We've got someone asking what happens if an employee retires at the end of 2023? Will they have access to benefits since they are contributing? They would need to have contributed for 500 hours in that time frame. And if they do, they will have earned a qualifying year and be eligible for benefits later on when they need care. Then we've got folks asking, what about Oregon employers who have out-of-state employees who live in Washington but work in Oregon? Allison, do you want to take that?
Sure. So the same localization rules apply to walk cares as apply to paid leave. So generally, if an employee is localized for the purposes of paid family and medical leave, they would also be localized for walk cares.
Thank you. And we've got someone asking, are union employees required to have walk cares withholding also?
And that depends on whether their collective bargaining agreement has been renegotiated, reopened, or expired. And I don't have the date off the top of my head. We can make sure to get that, but it's October. It's the same as paid family and medical leave.
Great. Okay. And we've got someone asking about timing. Is the deduction on the first paycheck on or after July 1st, or is it based on the dates of the pay period?
It's when it's paid. So it's wages paid and associated hours worked. So if wages are paid July 1st or after, that's where the withholding begins.
Perfect. And when someone is no longer exempt, I'm guessing from the conditional exemptions, what does that notification process look like? Will the employer get another letter from the state? Does the employee just tell them? And does that exemption come off at the start of a quarter?
So employees who no longer meet the conditions of their exemption need to notify both their employer and Employment Security Department within 90 days of no longer meeting the conditions of that exemption. And they'll be provided with new documentation from ESD once we've processed their discontinuation.
Thank you. And then we've got a question about third-party payroll companies and whether they have access to file these reports on employers' behalf, since they currently have the ability to do that for paid leave.
Yes, same as the integrated employer report. TPAs who are acting on behalf of employers for paid leave can continue to do that for both programs. If a TPA uses the ISESA file format, we will have new specifications for those files as well. And we're working with the larger payroll companies to make sure that there's understanding about the new requirements and the new file specifications.
Great. Then we've got several people asking about business owners. So we've got someone asking what's required of sole proprietors who have no employees.
If you're a sole proprietor and you are considered self-employed, then you would have the ability to opt in to walk cares.
Great. And let's see. Got someone asking about timeline on applying for those ongoing exemptions. Will the state take applications when someone moves into the state, or will they be contributing regardless, and what the timeline is for them to apply for that exemption?
So for the new categories of exemptions, the out-of-state non-immigrant visa holder, service-connected disability, and spouse or domestic partner of an active duty military member, those will be available. Those applications are available on an ongoing basis. So if someone were to move into the state and met the conditions for one of those exemptions, they could apply at the time that they moved here. And generally, we process those very quickly. We do know, though, running up to July 1st premium withholding, we expect that more folks may be trying to get their applications in. So while we generally have a very fast turnaround time, we're asking people to have them in by June 1st to guarantee that they'll have their approval letter before premium withholding begins.
Excellent. And we've got several folks asking about exemption letters if the person has private long-term care insurance prior to the 11/1/21 date, but doesn't have an exemption approval letter. Do they need the letter?
Well, they would need an approved exemption. So.
All right. Then let's see. If any employee has received an approved exemption, so for example, an out-of-state employee who lives in Oregon and then moves to Washington and is no longer eligible for that conditional exemption, is only the employee responsible to notify WACARES that they don't qualify? The employer doesn't have any responsibility to report possible changes?
No, it's the law puts the onus on the employee to do that notification. And if the employee were to fail to notify once they did, they would need to pay back premiums.
Got it. Can an employee get an exemption and then voluntarily decide at some point in the future to participate if their situation changes?
If it's for one of the conditional exemptions, they could discontinue if their conditions change. At this time, for the private long-term care insurance exemptions, those are permanent, and there is no ability to opt back in.
All right. And then we've got someone asking, saying that the SAW process can be a little cumbersome for an employee who's here on a non-immigrant work visa. Is this the only way to apply for an exemption?
It is not. Particularly, we know that there are many challenges for folks who may be here on a non-immigrant work visa, language challenges, technology barriers. We do have a paper application available in multiple languages, and we can, I believe it's on the website already, and if it's not, we can make sure to get it there. And we've also been working with a number of employers that we know tend to have a larger volume of non-immigrant visa workers coming in to make sure that they have that paper application to be able to distribute to those workers.
All right. And then let's see, looking for anything new. I think we've addressed part of this, but just to be sure, we've still got a lot of folks asking if owners and working board members in a corporation are exempt or if they contribute.
The definitions for employee and self-employment are the same between paid leave and WACARES fund. So generally, if you have been subject to paid family and medical leave premiums, you would be subject to WACARES fund premiums. If not, you still have the ability to opt in by electing coverage for either program or both.
Yeah. All right. And then we've got several folks still asking about whether any of those exemption groups, those ongoing exemption groups, are automatically exempt, or if they need to do the process in order to apply for an exemption application, And I just want to make sure that is just because we're seeing a lot of that in here. Yes, they do need to go through the exemption application process. They are not able to automatically be exempted without that exemption approval letter.
Correct.
And let's see. We've got some folks asking about withholding from part-time employees and whether there is a threshold for a certain number of hours where if you work less than that threshold, you don't contribute. Do you want to take that one or do you want me to, Allison?
I can take it. That is one place where there is a difference between paid family and medical leave and block cares. In paid family and medical leave, there's the ability to have a conditional waiver for employees who are not likely to work a certain number of hours, and that does not exist in block cares.
Thank you. And then we've got someone asking if tips are subject to block cares premiums.
I'm not sure that I actually know the answer to that, but we can find out.
All right. And we've got someone asking whether the payroll deduction rate will also increase with inflation like the benefit amount does. No, at this point, that is set in statute. So it would require a change to the law in order to change the 0.58% contribution rate. Then let's see. We've got several people asking about bonuses, whether gross wages is inclusive of all compensation, such as bonuses. Allison, do you want to take that?
That is a bit of a it depends answer, but we do have the definition and everything that is included. I believe it's in the employer toolkit, and if it isn't, we'll make sure to get it added. But it is the same as the definition for gross wages for paid family medical leave.
Okay. Let's see. Oof. Okay, so that's not sure what that one means. We've got some folks asking if we can once again state the living and working in and out of state, how that works essentially. So employees who the localization essentially. Allison, if you want to repeat that.
Localization is the same between paid leave and block care. So if an employee is localized for the purposes of paid family and medical leave, they will be localized for block care funds.
Thank you. And for the premiums that employers begin deducting on July 1st, when do those need to be remitted?
At quarterly reporting will begin in October.
Perfect. And we've got a request for clarification. When an exemption letter is given to an employer mid-quarter, does the withholding stop immediately or at the end of the quarter?
So if that would depend on the effective date of the exemption in the letter. And so when you receive the letter, if there are questions based on what the effective date is, you can call our customer care team. We'll be able to give you more explicit information if we had a little more detail.
Gotcha. And let's see. We've still got some confusion about whether owners pay into paid leave or walk cares. If they receive a paycheck as an owner, do they have to contribute?
Again, it goes back to if you contribute through premium withholding for paid family medical leave, it would be the same for walk cares. If there are questions about your specific situation, you can call our customer care team and we'll be able to give you more detailed information in a one-on-one conversation.
All right. And then we've got some folks asking if you have to meet the asset requirement of having $2,000 or less in assets to get benefits for walk cares, or does that just apply to Medicaid? That just applies to Medicaid. There are no requirements for income or assets in order to be able to get walk cares benefits, just the contribution requirement. So contributing for that set number of years and the care need requirement. So you need help with at least 3 activities of daily living. We've got a lot of questions about remote workers. I think this is, again, going back to the localization definition, but Allison, if you want to address that.
Yes, it goes back to localization. And if there are circumstances that are very specific or different or challenging in some way, you can call our customer care team and we'll be able to walk you through it.
All right. And we've still got a lot of questions about folks who missed the timeline for either getting private insurance before November 1st, 2021, or missed the timeline for applying to get a private long-term care exemption by December 31st of 2022, asking if there's another opportunity for those folks or for folks who move into Washington from out of state, if they will have an ability to apply for a private insurance exemption.
No, the private insurance exemptions were only available until December 31st, and those are not available to apply for anymore.
All right. And we've got a couple of folks asking what happens with contributions that you make to walk cares if you never need long-term care and don't need the program in that way. If it's helpful, think of walk cares as a social insurance program like Social Security. It's not a savings account. So everyone contributes a small amount of their earnings to the program in premiums, and then everyone who has met those contribution requirements and has a care need gets access to that same lifetime benefit amount. Let's see. We've got someone asking if student employees are exempt since they may not work 500 hours in a year. Allison, do you want to take that?
I think we touched on that the hours worked in a year aren't relevant for premium withholding.
Yeah, and keep in mind that 500 hours per year is only about 10 hours per week. So there are likely a lot of student employees who are working more than that 10-hour requirement and earning qualifying years towards walk cares benefits. Let's see. We've got someone asking about premium calculators. Is it on the walkcaresfund.wa.gov website? So we actually have 2 calculators. We have one calculator right now that is very simple. That's just the worker side. It's only for calculating walk cares premiums, and that is on the walkcaresfund.wa.gov website. But we also have on the paid leave.wa.gov website the calculator that Allison mentioned that allows you to calculate both paid leave premiums and walk cares premiums. So we've got both of those resources available depending on what you're looking for. And then let's see. And we've got someone asking if there will be auditing of some kind in the future for those with exemptions to confirm that they have coverage.
So for the private long-term care exemptions, my assumption is that's what the question is about, since it said confirm they have coverage. The process did not require someone to provide proof of coverage. It was an attestation, though we do have the ability to do some confirmation if necessary. At this time, it's possible things in the law would change, and we will communicate with folks who have those exemptions in the future if anything changes.
Thank you. And then we've got someone asking, do third-party PSPs need a new POA form for walk cares, or will the paid leave one cover it?
No need for a new form at this time. We'll continue, if you have a POA on file for paid leave, we'll continue using that. And the next time that you need to update for whatever reason, we'll have a new form available.
Thank you. And we are still seeing a lot of confusion about when, if wages for June dates are paid in a July check, whether those checks should include deductions, and when to first start withholding.
It's for the wages paid. It's when the remuneration happens.
Any check paid on or after July 1st, is that right? Yeah, okay. Then let's see if we can get one more in. We've got a couple of folks asking about saying that you currently can't print out reports of paid leave premiums submitted to identify possible errors or download the previous quarter's employee information, and is wondering if that is something that's going to be changed.
So we do have a number of enhancements, improvements coming to employer accounts, and those will apply to both paid leave and walk cares. There will be the ability to view and download transactions, report of transactions. We'll have the ability to add additional contact people and users for different aspects of account management and different responsibilities. And I know that the ability to print past reports has been a high request, and we are looking at adding that functionality in the future.
Thank you. Then we've got a couple of folks asking about whether this is different, or if a company already has a long-term disability insurance in place, whether you still have to participate in walk cares. And the answer is yes. So long-term care insurance benefits for a program like walk cares help pay for the services that are needed by people who can't perform everyday tasks themselves. So people who need long-term care can get services through that long-term care insurance. Whereas disability insurance generally are benefits that cover part of a worker's income when they have an illness or injury and have to take time off from work because they're unable to do their job. So this is in addition to any disability insurance that your workers might have. And then we've also got someone asking if the benefit is transferable. And the answer to that is, as mentioned earlier, no, it works like an insurance program. So the same way that you're not able to transfer your own personal health insurance benefits to someone else, you're not able to transfer your Walk Care's benefits. You pay in that small amount, your small percentage of your wages in order to have access to care later on if you do need it. Let's see, I think we can maybe get one more in. We've got here, we'll go ahead and answer this question. So we've got some folks asking whether the Q&A will be available later or about the webinar materials. Let's go ahead and cover that, and then we'll go ahead and close out for today. So for those of you who have submitted Q&As and we've not been able to get to your answer live, we will be following up with you. Our customer care team will pull those, and as long as you registered with your email address, we'll be able to follow up with you by email to answer your question. Apologies to those of you who were not able to get to live. We do have several hundred Q&As, so we've done our best to get through those, and we will follow up with you later on. If you are interested in the recording of this program, then you'll be able to access that on our website. Here, we'll go ahead and advance the slide for you at this same walkcaresfund.wa.gov/webinars page. So you can get the presentation slides there. You'll be able to access a recording there later on if you need it. And if you want to reach out to us in advance of hearing from us, if you submitted a Q&A, you can also use our customer care information that's on your screen here and on the website contact us page. There's an email form on the contact page that will route your inquiry to the appropriate agency, depending on what your question was. And then we have these two phone numbers. If you're an employer or if you have a question about exemptions, you can use the first one listed here. If you have any other questions about the program, particularly things like benefits, then you can call our 844-CARE4WA number. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. And please do make sure to sign up for our mailing list and the ESD employer newsletter in order to be notified of future webinars. Everyone have a great afternoon.